Tractate Bava Batra, beginning of chapter 10, Get Pashut. God bless you, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you all, not only those who are here, but those who are watching us. This special chapter, Tosfot explains, is not just something that relates in a way to our subject, but because we talk about Shchiv, about the person on his deathbed, and all the documentation involved with that, so therefore we talk also about get. Most of the people misconstrue the concept of get. Get is not only bill of divorce. In those days it was also a matter of documentation that involved with get. But here the Rebbe is going to teach us a different form of get. It can be a bill of divorce that involved with a regular way of writing it and signatures. There is a get that folded, like the old days accordion, you know, the one who's folded in a certain way, and there's a need to have a different signatories in each phase. Sometimes they are need of two, sometimes they need of three. So here's the Mishnah. Get Pashut. Get Pashut meaning an ordinary document. Ordinary document, as we said, is not necessarily, Rashbam said, bill of divorce. Can be any type of document. So here, a dav mitocho, meaning there is a certain decorum, a certain form when it's involved with writing that document that the witnesses need to sign inside, which is on the written side of the paper in order to make it legitimate. There is another phase that's called mekushar. Mekushar, as we explained, it's a folded in a certain way, and it's a tight document. You see in some of you Gemarrot in the Schattenstein and Koran and others, a different form. So basically, since you fold it, they write one line and then they fold it another one, they fold it in a certain way, then they tie it. So therefore, you have to have a signatory to each part. The witnesses basically sign on the outer part of the document. So he said, a dav me'achorav, the documentation need to be signed by the witnesses on the back of the document. Then the Mishnah said, Pashut shekadvu eidav me'acharav. If you take a regular, ordinary document, and the witnesses not sign on the face of the document, but they sign on the back of the document, mekushar shekadvu etav mitocho. If you have a folded document that the witnesses sign within the document, so they said in both cases, shnehem psulin. Since the sages is the one who instituted it, and it has to be in a certain decorum and a certain structure, he didn't follow that rule, so therefore it's not valid. Rabbi Chanina ben Gamliel omer, mekushar shekadvu adam mitocho kasher. He holds, Rabbi Chanina ben Gamliel holds that when it's come to this type of tied document, whose witnesses wrote their signature inside, they said that it's fine, it's a valid, because one can transform it into the regular, ordinary document. You can make it a regular, ordinary document, and obviously there is a lot to discuss. The Rashbam here, and Tosfot elaborates how it can be and what exactly need to be done in order to make it valid. Rabban Shimon Gamliel omer hakol kimnag hamdina. That's a beautiful statement. He says that since you have a different community in different part of the world, so later the Gemara elaborates, but in general, the idea is that since there is a community minhag, original customs, you go by the original customs. Furthermore, the Rambam tells us, and you see it also in a Choshen Mishpat, in a code, chapter 42, I'm just reading from the Koran translation, some say that any document that does not follow the procedures that established by the sages is not valid, because the sages are the one who instituted it, even if there is nothing objectionable in the text. So therefore, if one writers a Thai document today, when we have no first-hand knowledge of its proper preparation, so it's not valid. That's basically the view of Nemukei Yosef. And as we said, the Rambam, the famous Rambam, notes that this opinion is not accepted by the regular authoritative halacha, but is another differentiation between the documentation, which is get pashut edav b'shnayim. When it's come to an ordinary document, and as we said earlier, get is not only the common way of people that thinking that is only bill of divorce, is any type of documentation. So when you have a regular document, he rendered its validity by having two witnesses, but only two, no more. umekushar. However, if they have this type of folded document, because they have tie document and having all this complication with the signatory, etc., so therefore you need to have at least umekushar bishlosha, 3 witnesses. That's the way the sages instituted. Obviously, we talk about a document that have 3 folding place, but if he did more than 3, the rabbi said, as we learn in Gittin, page 81, that you need to have according to the number of folding, the way that you folded the document. The last part of the Mishnah said, Pashut shekatav bo ed echad, if you take an ordinary document which is written, witness wrote his signature, and umekushar shekatav bo shnei edim, if you have the other style, which is the tie document, and the 2 witnesses wrote their signatures, so they said, Shnehem psulim, they are both not valid. So obviously there is much to discuss, and we're going to hear about it in 5 days from now on page 165. The Gemara elaborates what exactly the deal with a regular document that you have only 1 witnesses. But let's go to the Gemara. The Gemara asks the first question, Menahanamile. What's the source that there are different documentation that differentiate between one another, the way that they are prepared and the way that we count the witnesses? Amar Rabbi Chanina explained to us that the source is from the book of Jeremiah, chapter 32. They said, Amar Kras Sadot Bakesef Iknu Vechatov Basefer Vachatom Vehaed Eidim. That was the 10th year of the King Tzidkiyahu. King Tzidkiyahu was the last king of the reign of the kingdom of Judah. That time Jerusalem unfortunately was under siege by the evil king of Babylon, Nebuchadnezzar. That time the prophet Jeremiah was jailed in the it's called Chatzer HaMatara, a special jail part that they put him because he prognosticated the horrible exile that Jewish people are going to have. And while he was in jail, the text speaks about his prophecy, and he prognosticated that Almighty asked him to go and purchase a field from his uncle, his cousin, whose name is Hanam El, and that's basically precede to Jeremiah a prophecy that even Jerusalem is going to be sieged and fall to the hand of evil king of Babylon, and it will force the majority of the people of Jewish people to go to exile. 90% to Babylon, about 10% went to Egypt with Jeremiah, but he still advised people to buy a field with money and to have a proper documentation with witnesses and everything, in order for them to have a proof when they return to the land. And as we said, that he was a prophet and he prophesied, and it happens that between the first and the second temple, it was 70 years of exile. Later on, Ezra led the people to get to the second temple and build it. So therefore, Jeremiah instructed people, and he said, Sadot bakesef yiknu vechatov basefer, instructed people, and I'm just reading the translation of Jeremiah. He said, they shall buy fields for money and subscribe the deeds and seal them and call witnesses. So here, because they use this term, Sadot bakesef yiknu vechatov basefer, which means he asked him clearly, asked the people that they shall buy field for money and subscribe the deeds. Page 160b, ze pashut, meaning ordinary document, that's the Rashbam said, and he said it's like part like a book. Vechatom ze mekushar, and you talk about seal them, that apply to a tie document. Vehaed shnaim, since he referred to witnesses, so therefore there are requirement of clear 2 witnesses. Edim shlosha, when you talk about this mekushar tied, you need to have 3 witnesses. Hakeitzad, how do you reconcile the difference between the phases of the document? So he said, Shnaim lepashut u'shlosha lemekushar. You have to have 2 witnesses as a basic requirement for ordinary document, and 3 witnesses are required for a tie document. Ve'ipuch ana. So how about if I just go by the reverse order, which means I require 2 witnesses for the tie document and 3 for ordinary one. So he said here, mitoch shenitrabe biksharav, nitrabe be'edav. So since the document has more to be done with its ties, so therefore you have to have more with regard to witnesses, which means that in this case you have to have 3 witnesses. Another source, Rav Amar Mehacha. This is a sentence, is a verse in the book of Jeremiah, chapter 32. ויקח את ספר המקנה ואת החתום והמצווה והחוקים ואת הגלוי. Here, Jeremiah speaks about, took the deed of the purchase, that it which was sealed, the term and conditions, and that which was open. So what does that mean? So we go to explain, את החתום זה מקושר, ואת הגלוי זה פשוט שבמקושר, המצווה והחוקים אלו דברים שבין פשוט למקושר. הכיצד זה ידיו 2 וזה ידיו 3, זה ידיו מתוכו וזה ידיו מאחוריו. So basically he analyzed this sentence by saying that it applies to all different form of documentation and form of witnesses. When you have a simple one, we have the tied one, you have the 2, and you have 3 witnesses. So for example, the galui, the one who is open, applies to ordinary, which is unfold part of the tied document. Or for example, when he speaks about mitzvah v'chukim, terms and condition, so that's applied that between regular one and the one who's tied, and therefore you have the 2 versus the 3, because of the issues we explained earlier with a tie document. Ve'ipuchana, so how about we said the opposite, the order, that you need to give for the mekushar only 2, and pashut, the ordinary are 3. So they said mitoch שנתרבה בשעריו ונתרבה בידיו. The same way, because you have more tied, you have to have more witnesses. The third source, רמי בר יחזקאל אמר מאחה, על פי 2 עדים או 3 עדים, או על פי 3 עדים יקום דבר. The Torah said in Deuteronomy chapter 19 that in order to make something happen, you need to have 2 and 3 witnesses. אם תתקיים לאותם בשניים למרחה פרט לך, ושלושה. If we believe in 2 witnesses and we make that this is a valid case, why do we need to bother to say that 3? So he said, לומר לך, to teach us that these are different cases, such as here, when you have a simple document, basic document versus one who is tied. So he said, 2 לפשוט ו3 למקושר. When you have a simple, ordinary document, you require 2, versus when you have the one who is tied document, you need to have 3. So the same question, ויפוחנה, מתוך שנתרבה בשעריו ותרבה בידיו. So you ask a question, והנה לאחי ודעתו, so why you need all these verses? כל אחד ואחד למילתא ודעתה. Each one has a meaning. As we said many times, the Torah is very prudent with words, so if you use 2 certain words, these carry a special meaning. לכתתניא, שדות בכסף יקנו וכתוב בספר וחתום. עצה טובה כמשמען. Here they give us a good counsel, a good advice, which is that people should carefully document their purchases in order to provide permanent proof of purchase. That's the idea that he advised the prophet. ויקח את ספר המקנה וכולי הכאה ומעשה. That was the story that Jeremiah himself purchased that field, was sealed the way that the sages instituted. על פי 2 עדים או 3 עדים, להקיש 3 ל2, בפלוגתא דרבי עקיבא ברבנן, as we learned that in the Mishnah in Tractate Makot, page 5b. So the Gemara agreed with that rejection, and the Gemara concluded and said, אלא מקושר מדרבנן ואוקראי אסמכתא בעלמא. That's beautiful, because here they give us a clarification what's the idea of tie document, and they said the entire institution of a tie document is a rabbinic in origin, and all the other verses that we cite is basically the Amoraic view. In order to support their notion, they have this support, it's called asmachta be'alma, from the concept of tie document for the purpose of actual sources, which is just a source to support the view from the Torah. So the Ritva explained that that's basically the remez, the implication indirectly from the Torah, even the rabbinic enactment. The Gemara continued and said, so if that's the case, what's the purpose of the sages to institute a tie document? It was a place that the priest lived. As you know, the priest, as Hosea, the prophet Hosea in chapter 4 said that the priests were very, I don't know if it's the right word to say that people have a short fuse, or people who are very kind of strong. And if you remember, we studied both in Gemarrah in Kiddushin, page 70, as well as Gemarrah in Shabbat, page 149, that the priests are kind of not only great lineage and importance, but also have kind of a strong character, and therefore, they get angry quickly. So the fear is, they get home, they didn't like something, they divorce the wife. And the fear is, you know, these guys, they get divorced and the next day they regret it. But it's too late, because the priest not allowed to have his wife divorcee back by Jewish law. So the rabbis were very considerate about this crisis that the priests can create it for themselves by having this type of short temper. and therefore they try to delay that decision by giving the persons more time to rethink and reconsider his behavior, and therefore they make it in such a way. The Torah said it clearly in Leviticus chapter 21 that one of the prohibitions for the Kohanim, for the priests, they cannot marry a divorcee. So they said, Avde Rabbanan Takanta, so that's the reason that the rabbis came in and put a boundary over these rules. So in between, meanwhile, their composure will be regained, and they will reconsider their decision to get divorced. So the Gemara said, Atenach Gitin, we understand that why the rabbis instituted when it's come to the bill of divorce with women. But how about other, the documentation like promissory note and other notes? Shtarot Ma'ikale Memar. Why you allowed to have this type of documentation that is tied? The simple reason is that if Tosfot explained that people sometimes mix up between the two, and people think that there is any differentiation of their levels. So in order for the scribe and everyone to agree that this is a form of documentation, as we explained, the word get applies to both, so therefore they make it such a way. So then the Mishnah said that the witnesses need to sign for a tied document on the back of the document, not the front. So now the Gemara elaborates where is that. So they said, Heichan Eidin Chotmim. Where do the witnesses sign a tied document? So they said, Ravuna Amar Ben Kesher LeKesher. Ravuna said, is between each tied fold. And Rabbi Abba Amar, Achorei HaKtav Ucheneged HaKtav B'chutz. Rabbi Abba said, they sign on the back, on the written side, and taking care of the signatures that are really exactly opposite the writing on the outside. One of my closest friends, Rabbi Yirmiyahu Benowitz, he wrote several books. He's a Safra Daina, he's an expert, he's a judge in the rabbinic court in Baltimore. He wrote the book based on this idea of all different tied or not tied documentation. God bless him, he did a great job. Anyway, אמר לרמי בר חמא לרב חיסדא, לרבונה דאמר בין קשר לקשר כסל לדתך בין קשר לקשר מגבאי, והדאהו בקושר דקהל לקיימן דרבי. So here we talk about tied in the inside of the document. אמר רבי אין זמן בזה. So Rabbi said that there is no date to the document, so it's not valid. So אמר לרבי שמעון ברבי לרבי שמא בין קשריו מובלע. So he said, you're concerned that perhaps the date hidden between the tied folds. So Rabbi Yonasi said, Palyei v'chazyei. He openly saw the date was in fact between the tied folds. V'imita en zman bezeh v'ned bezeh b'bayalei. So if you have cases like that you don't have in one side, so the witnesses signed between each tied fold on the inside of the document. So therefore, Rabbi Yonasi should have two objections, and he said there is no date on the document, on this document, and there is also no witnesses signed on this document. So the Gemara said, Amar lei, Rabbi Chizda answered Rabbi Chia to Rami Bar Chama, and he said, Mi savrat, do you meant to say that Ravuna meant ben kesher lekesher migavai, that you have to have a tied fold in the inside? He said, Lau ben kesher lekesher mi barai. The requirement is from outside. So the Gemara said, may we concern that is a chance for people to have this document falsifies, have some information, and he wrote whatever he wanted. And this is a concern because there is already witnesses signed on the document, which happens sometimes. People have those full witnesses that sign something and later on they change the document itself, and therefore you enter the domain of a big falsehood. Obviously, the Rabbeinu Gershom and Rashbam have a different view of what the Gemara meant here, but they said, we're not concerned because the end of the document they said is confirmed and established. So it's every folded document must contain this formula at the end of the text to prevent forgery. Any written after formula will be disregarded. So here we basically learn a lot of halachot. I just want to share with you one of them because there are so many. One of the halachot that here we learn, it's about the different documentation when it's come to get, and we explained that the get is not only the bill of divorce, it can be regular documentation. So the one I would like to conclude is from the Shulchan Aruch, the code, Choshen Mishpat, chapter 44. They said today, when it is the accepted practice to write at the very end of all document, every single ordinary document, everything is confirmed and established. Any document that is missing this formula is just invalid. So therefore, witnesses may not sign any document where these words are not written. If this formula is written twice in a document, the document is valid, since the witnesses sign after the text, confirming the veracity of everything written before the signatures. The Rema, which one of the commentary on the code, on Choshen Mishpat 44, he said, he bring the Rosh, Rabbeinu Asher notes that nevertheless, this formulation should not be written twice.